Hey, everybody, and welcome back to Pro AV today. One of the things I love most about being in a technology focused industry is that we're constantly finding ways to leverage technology to not only empower different industries, but empower different people. And one of the most amazing applications that I've seen technology, and really specifically AI, be leveraged this year and over the last couple of years is to empower creators. Whether that's writers, whether that's broadcasters, whether that's editors, content creators. It's been incredible to see how AI has been able to really empower those people to not have to worry about traditional technical challenges or be able to jump over maybe some of the hurdles or barriers that were in place previously. And I wanted to have someone on today to talk about that who really not only has a lot of experience in the industry, but has a lot of incredible insight. And that's Alex Grossman. Alex, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Hey, thanks, Ben. Glad to be here.
Alex, if you would just kind of set the stage for us, right? AI obviously is kind of this buzzword still, and there's generative AI, which is your tools like Chat GPT and things like that. But when you look back, kind of specifically the broadcast and the asset management side of the world, we've kind of been towing that line for a while. Break down some of the ways that you've seen specifically our industry, the tech focused industries, leverage some of these AI tools.
Sure, that's a great question. I mean, AI has been around for about 5 years in broadcast and particularly in the media space in general, whether it's been used in post or in broadcast or just from general creators. And for the most part, it was a little bit of a gimmick. It was a little bit of, what do I do with it? How do I use it? Everybody started with facial recognition, and they were really looking at the big picture of it, saying, well, there's 8 billion people in the world. I have to have this huge model, and then what I do, I'm going to find that one person. It's going to be either that or it's going to be Skynet taking over the world. But in reality, in the last year, it's really taken off. And as you mentioned, ChatGPT and generative AI pieces are really important. But there's also this other side of it we call process AI that I think is just as important and probably more important to when we talk about content creators and especially the assets they create and managing and finding those assets.
Well, look, I almost even hate to label it as media asset management, right? There's a lot of misconceptions and a lot of places that people's minds will go, and the boring process management, archival storage, and things like that. But really, when you think about holistically the world of digital media and asset management, it's editing with proxies, it's being able to edit with higher bandwidth probabilities, being able to search things, and yes, it's a little bit boring at times, but the reality is that it's been a significant barrier for our industry, especially the media industry, for a long time, but also for like houses of worship and educational institutions where they had such difficulty logging, training sessions and teaching sessions and sermons and so many different places like that. So when you look at the creator world now, and you look at maybe editors specifically or asset managers specifically, generative AI in the asset management world has really been game changing for a lot of people, right? This is a discussion that we've had before, is that technology, we're at a point now where technology is empowering creators to create, whereas a while ago they had to worry about technology, signal flow, do I have this drive mounted? A lot of that really happens behind the scenes now, thanks to some of the AI tools. Talk about specifically on that asset management side, how AI really has driven a lot of that change.
It's really kind of interesting because as you mentioned that, I look back and I go, what are the biggest challenges people have as creators? I don't care where you are. It's always your content. It's finding that content and categorizing that content. So the reason that digital asset managers and media asset managers came into play was simply because people had content. They couldn't label it. They didn't know what it was. And as people got more and more content and content got bigger, let's face it, right? Resolution, there's never enough. I mean, you can res things up, but starting with the highest resolution you can will always guarantee that in the future, there's going to be additional value. And so it's all about monetization. So if you have content, if you can't monetize it, what do you need it for? But the whole key is monetizing it over and over again. And the only way you're able to do that is to be able to find it and have it in the correct category. So asset managers started out by doing what we call a schema, saying, I'm going to figure out what is important to me about the content I have, and I'm going to label it. And so, for instance, it usually started out with simple things like, where is it? What's the location? Who's in it? Who are the people? What does it describe? Is it a building? Is it a scene of a car chase? What is that? And asset managers got to the point where They got really expensive, number one, because they had to do a lot of things. But more importantly, you had a committee of people, and you mentioned editors, and this is the most important thing. You had a committee of people who were designing asset managers, and they had to build this schema. They had to decide what was important. And 90% of the time, the people who were left out were the editors. So editors never got to say what it was. And so they're the people searching for things, and they're looking at the schema, and other people were labeling it. And so 99% of the time, it either didn't get filled in, or it was an other, or it was an X, or something crazy. And so when you went to find it a year, 6 months down the road, maybe even 5 years down the road, it wasn't there. And so as we categorized it, the big thing just a few years ago was taking content that you had on a bunch of disparate pieces, like a bunch of hard drives or LTO tapes, or some of it has even been in the cloud the last few years. You take it in and you hire people to look at it and figure out what's in there. And all of a sudden AI comes along, and you no longer have to do that. So now as you're ingesting that content, you can decide, I don't want a schema. I just want something to tell me what's actually there. Who's in that scene? What is that scene? Where's that location? What objects are in there? And then build that schema. And GPT is great for this, right? Just looking at all that information. And then later, when I want to get it out, all I have to do is search for something in a very descriptive manner, and it'll give me that information. And without training, which is the most important thing about AI, and we should talk about that, without training, your accuracy can be lower, but for the most part, it's still better than searching. Like even if you say something untrained is a 65 or 70% accuracy. Now I'm a Mac user, and today I enjoyed, Apple's WWDC presentation and got all excited about new stuff. But, even with Spotlight on my single Apple computer with all my hard drives and everything else connected to it, I still probably are 10% accurate in finding things, right? I can't remember what I called it, what it was, where it is, especially if it's an image or a video sequence. I'm pretty bad about that, so I don't get good. Now, again, when you're in a collaborative network, or you've got people who are collaborating remotely, that even becomes way harder. That's where media asset managers really come in, and where you can use one that's not based in the old sense of schemas, but using a lot of AI tools to do that.
One of the things I love about leveraging AI for a lot of these tools specifically is that it can provide a lot more detail than an editor might, right? So if I'm in a hurry and I am looking at my show dailies, I might say, okay, let's just say product placement, right? Say Pepsi's paid me $1 million to have a Pepsi can in 3 shots. I'm gonna label, okay, like Pepsi can here. Here's a couple other details about the scene, whatever. Here's what I think is important. But when you think about AI ingest and AI, accessibility, they're obviously they're going to be able to pull that's a Pepsi can, Pepsi logo, things like that. But they're going to be able to pull color of shirts, things for continuity, transcripts, things that just were not even on the radar of the average logger. And especially when you talk about terms of like data and searchability, right? So if I'm at a shoot, and I know, man, there was this one really cool take where Scotty was wearing sunglasses, but I can't find it because nobody named it. Nobody ingested it properly. These files are now searchable through detailed AI. And that's one of the places I'm really, really excited about seeing editors leverage this is because they're able to search for more granular, more detailed, even in some cases by transcript, right? So being able to search by what words were said in the scene, I think there's so much opportunity on the table.
Oh, it's just incredible. I mean, we've all been there, right? Whether it's a DIT, a data wrangler, anybody who's on set, and a lot of this logging happened on paper, and it was written.
Right.
These people could be doctors, right? This stuff is like
or
Latin,
just
man.
stick it on the tape.
Yeah, and a lot of times it's just a Post-it note stuck onto a hard drive, and it never makes it all the way back. Where people look at it and they're like, screw that, right? I'm ingesting stuff. And even we tried so hard just a few years ago to take mobile systems and load a copy of a media asset manager in there so people would do it, but people weren't filling that out. And let's face it, if you've ever been on set or remote, or even at a let's even look worse, sports event, timing is so critical. You just don't have the time to do it. You're worried about getting that shot, not worried about logging that shot. And even though we should do a better job at it, the sun isn't cooperative, the clouds aren't cooperative, the people, talent are not always cooperative. So you've got no time to do this. and this is where AI comes in. And there's two ways to look at this. One way is even before it gets to the studio, as you ingest it, you grab that information, and even if you're doing your dailies, you can give the director a better idea of what they're seeing. And for reshoots, how many times has something been reshot where someone's wearing something different, or their hairstyle is different, or they're wearing glasses or no glasses? These things now fix all those problems, and they do it in a seamless manner. But there's some cost involved in doing that, and there's ways around that a lot of people don't look at. And I think for creators today, the cloud is really the key, right? Oh, we look up at the cloud and we get all excited, but you're paying for that cloud time when you're using AI. So not only do you have to push the content up there, then pay for the time in the cloud, then pay the egress fees to get it back, and then have to have it. That's kind of difficult if you're just doing it in dailies. But there are ways and there are tools where you can do it locally. Like, for instance, there's lower end media asset managers. Axel AI is a great example of this. They'll actually stand up a small server. They have object recognition, facial recognition, transcription. It's all there. You don't have to push it to the cloud. There's other tools like that. That's probably my favorite, but there's a lot of tools like that you can actually do that with, and they're inexpensive, and so you can have users to do that. Other ways, people love the cloud, right? Maybe you're editing in the cloud, so you're going to do it. But those costs come there, and then there's always the other piece that I always worry about, which is just, and you have this with ChatGPT too, is just, your content is your IP. And now you're putting your IP somewhere into a tool that you don't know what they're doing with it or who owns it, right? We have these issues in Europe where people are worried about, I don't want the cloud to be in Belgium if I'm in the UK. I don't want the cloud to be in Germany if I'm in Italy, right? There's these really questionable laws about who owns the content when it's up there. And their same issue with AI. Sure, I mean, if you can go to the big three and you can be pretty sure that everything that's in their catalogs, hopefully, you have a certain security. But you've done this. I was just thinking about this the other day. I got a new version of Mac OS, and I was looking at the terms of service, and I scrolled through like 40 pages and gave up, right? It's like, we don't read those terms and conditions. We don't know really what they're doing with their content. So that's why I like the idea of having it when I can on a local server, have it there, have it available, and work with it and know where these tools are. Again, a lot of these tools are what I call process AI, which are transcription, facial recognition, object recognition, and you still have to train them. And that's really the difference, in my opinion, AI versus programming, right? Programming, the programmer trained it. AI, the programmer taught it to learn and to be trained, and it's only as good. It's garbage in, garbage out, right? It's only as good as the training. But today, you can get these training models up to 98% accuracy pretty easy with a lot of these tools.
Well, look, that's where we're going next. Is obviously when you kind of look at the pantheon of AI tools these days, the burden to make the decision or to evaluate the best tools really, like we said, kind of fall on the creators. What are some of the things that creators really are calling for, or maybe asking for, that the AI world, some people are giving to them, the other people are not?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think the tools are there. Like I've been looking at some of the tools that are just incredibly good for creators, all the way down from the YouTube level, the prosumer level, all the way up to major broadcasters. And a lot of these tools are the same. Like, you look at what Photoshop is doing right now, just with some of the AI components are putting in. I mean, I could use it at home or I could use it in the studio. These tools are there. But the biggest problem has been ease of use. So all the AI tools are a little different to use. Some are browser-based, some are apps in the cloud, some are apps locally, and they all require different types of logins, different passwords, and different training models. And that's really the key. There's no lack of models out there. I mean, like, for instance, NVIDIA has a number of models, but everybody has models. The models are all over. You can go to, what's that website called? Huggingface.co. And you can find every AI tool there and every model that there is, right? And the problem is the training. So when we get to a training model, and this is what broadcasters and other people are looking at, is like, how do I take the people I have and have them use AI. I don't want to hire a data scientist who doesn't know my process, doesn't understand workflow, doesn't understand pipeline, and they're just there to sit behind the keyboard and train my stuff for things that I don't know. And they realize that same example you use, there's a Pepsi can in this shot, but we want to make sure there's not a Diet Coke can in that shot, right? So I want to paint that out, or I want to use a different shot. So there's things that they won't know and things that we'll know. So making it easy is really what people are asking for. They're going, how do I make this easy? How do I just use one tool? And don't get me wrong, there's a couple of people out there who have done this. Like I mentioned, some of the MAMs, especially some of the good ones, have a lot of these tools that you use already built in, but there has to be a way to be able to access more of them in an easier way and an easier way to train.
Well, look, I'm going to wind you up and let you go here. It's not off topic, but it's not part of the core topic. But what we've seen, and you and I both saw this at NAB, is that there are certain companies, there are certain people, organizations, individuals who are really reluctant to adapt to AI. And you saw this a little bit with the transition to the cloud and remote production, right? There are people who are a couple of steps behind. A, what do you have to say to those people? Keep it nice. B, how can you help those people make the jump to the 21st century?
Well, I think, Ben, we saw this with the cloud, right? And I would say AI is like electricity compared to the cloud, maybe being like having rubber tires on your car rather than stone or steel rims, right? But AI is so game changing. We had to drag people to the cloud back in 2013 to 2016. Then all of a sudden, everything became a cloud first initiative. You would walk in any post facility and broadcaster, and they go, how do I do this in the cloud? But I need a pen. Well, how do I do that in the cloud, right? It was like, that was that cloud first initiative. AI will be that in spades. What I tell people all the time is this. People who are using AI today across the board are making more money with it. So it's allowing people to monetize with less, and this is going to sound terrible, right? Less labor, but you can take the people who are creative and have them create rather than spend their time programming or trying to figure things out or searching through hours and hours of content to find things. They can find things quicker, they can get the right thing, and then they can right? It's all about telling a better story, and it's about monetizing. And anybody who looks at a library of content, that library of content they have, and this is petabytes, exabytes of content, it's only good if you can monetize it. If you can't monetize that content that's out there, what are you keeping it for? If it's in the cloud or it's local, it's on LTO or it's on some type of, tier 2, tier 3 storage that's out there, it's only good if you can monetize it. And you can only monetize it if you know what you've got. And so there's a lot of content out there with a lot of value. I used to do this. You go through your shoebox of, your parents' stuff and everything. You look at these pictures, you're like, I don't even know who those people in those pictures are. I think this is like my grandfather when he was 5, but who are all those other people, right? It's the content's only valuable is there. I mean, it could have been my grandfather with Albert Einstein, but I wouldn't know. Well, maybe, but maybe someone else, right? So I tell people, stop dragging and screaming, getting in there, try it on something easy, right? If you're a content creator and you're at that entry level of content, you're above, you're a small shop, independent production company, purchase a lower cost media asset manager because you're going to need it, something that has object recognition, facial recognition in there, transcription capabilities, start there. If you're going to use AI tools, make sure you know where they're coming from. There's a lot of tools on the internet today that have a web presence and they ask you upload this and we'll look at that. Be very careful of the terms of service when you do that, but start with them. I mean, there's just tools, trusted source, trusted tools, start there and look at your pain points. So in every workflow, and I'll try to keep it shorter, Ben, but every workflow and every pipeline.
I told you I was winding you up. I knew what I was getting myself into.
Yeah. There's just every workflow, every pipeline, there's problems. There's these, what I call friction areas, right? This is where things just aren't going smoothly. It's just not going across. Maybe you can't find something. Maybe you're not sure of the scene. Maybe you don't even know who's in the scene. A lot of times, those friction areas are where you start with AI. So I always find the easiest one is you look at facial recognition. People go, well, on facial recognition, I have to go to the cloud. They have this large language model. I have to train it. There's 8 billion people. I go, no. You've just done a production. There's 10 actors. You have their faces. This is really simple. Actors, actresses, people in there. You have their faces. You load them. You train them. The angles of the faces. You know where it is. Boom. They find it instantly. It just saved you hours of going through every scene to know how long someone was in that scene, what their time was, and then what the transcript of what they said. That's easily accessible today. I was just mentioning Axel AI, easy accessible there. I can do that in a number of minutes. If you want to try the tools and you want to play with them, there's tools on the web you can do for free. One of my favorites is this thing called Cynthia.io. Have you ever played with that yet?
I have not.
It allows you to create talking head videos with text to speech with a number of avatars. So if you're I could do it here, right? I can just text this out, build an avatar that looks a lot better than me, and actually do a video for, like you said, house of worship, in-house production. A lot of companies like this that are just smaller companies doing HR videos, things like that creators need to do, and they charge people to do this. Well, now you don't have to bring a video crew out. You don't have to bring anything out. Just go interview the people on there, build the video for them, put backgrounds in, do what you need to do. You get paid to do it. It's an easy creator way of doing it. So there's so many tools and so many pieces to do it. Don't be reluctant. Start somewhere. If you don't, you'll never get there. Now, I'll mention one more thing. I've been talking to a lot of people who are in my field of everywhere in the marketing side, and there are so many people today using ChatGPT to build data sheets and sales sheets, and I even see them doing, companies that actually do it for product managers are using them to write MRDs. Now, I love the idea of that. I wouldn't put my IP out there. There's a number of companies like Apple that said you can't use it because if you put Apple Vision, their new AR headset out there, and people would kind of know where that went, because it is recorded all the time. But there is some value in that. It's a place to start. Writer's block. In fact, I have a good friend that has his own GPT he wrote, and he's actually doing a sci-fi novel completely using that tool. And I've read the first 10 pages of it, and it's actually pretty good. So, and that's one of my hobbies. I kind of write those things. But it's really interesting how this is changing the future. So even if you're going to use it professionally, find those parts in your pipeline where there's problems, attack them that way, start small, start local, and then you can always go to the cloud. But just be really careful, cautionary tale, be worried about plagiarism. Don't plagiarize people. That's a bad thing. And be worried about other people, owning your content. So those are my 2 words on that.
Well, Alex, look, the expression "you eat an elephant one bite at a time" I think applies very much to AI because I'm someone who is relatively well researched on it and always trying new tools and things like that. And every time I talk to someone like you, I'm always learning something new. And I feel like there's just so much that I don't know. But hopefully we're creating value for people, right? I feel like we're able to learn these things and teach these things one step at a time, especially when it comes to the creator community, where we've embraced the idea of platforms and tools for so long. It's wonderful to see those technology barriers coming down for those creators and making it easy for them. Alex Grossman, thanks so much for coming on the show today. We got to have you back on for sure.
Thanks, Ben. Take care.
And thanks to you for watching. Be sure to watch next time.